Hi, everyone. Thanks again for tuning into another Future of Money series sponsored by Libra Services. My name is Denitha Doe, and I am here with David Ringstrom, a fabulous man with lots of talents. He is the CEO of Accounting Advisors as well as a contributing writer for Accounting Web, CPE Link, and Going Concern. Thank you so much for joining me today, David.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself and like I said, you are a man of many talents and a lot of balls in the air as we were just talking about. Can you tell us about your company as well as what you do with other companies as well?
Sure. I am a CPA, but I'm a very unconventional CPA. I don't do taxes. I don't even do my own taxes. That's not what I'm good at. My little niche is I help businesses automate complex tasks, and lots of times it's repetitive tasks, getting data into an accounting package or out of an accounting package. A lot of spreadsheet consulting using Excel more effectively. So I'm doing a lot of helping people work smarter, either through me building tools for them or teaching for companies like CPE Link or Western CPE. There's about 15 companies I'm teaching for these days. So teaching is going very well for me. I also do freelance writing, and so I write for Accounting Web and Going Concern, and so I am the technical editor at large for Accounting Web, which means sounds fancy. It just means I get to write about whatever I want to write about. So, but it's good. The writing and the consulting and the training all feed each other, and so it's a fun little gig I have.
That's awesome. And I would say that that's pretty fancy, whether it's that title or the fact that you just get to write about whatever you want. That's pretty awesome.
Right.
So tell us a little bit then about with accounting advisors, what specifically that means, your work for accountants and streamlining their processes.
So I don't do anybody's books. I will teach somebody how to do their books effectively, or if they have some kind of repetitive task of getting data out of a shopping cart or out of some other software and transforming that into data that goes in their accounting package, or creating reports that get, lots of times with accounting packages, the data gets stuck under glass and you're seeing it on the screen, but you can't manipulate it the way you want. I can often help get the data out and reformat it and create tools to automate that. And with all my engagements, I work myself out of a job. I come in, I help see what the problem is, work myself out of a job, and move on to the next thing. And I've been doing that for almost 25 years, and so it's working out. I'm going to keep working myself out of a job.
I think you've got a pretty good gig going on. That's
It's
amazing.
fun.
That's amazing. So, with your work, is helping other businesses automate the back end piece as well as writing for 15 different companies
Well,
and
well, teaching. I'm writing for a couple companies, but teaching for 15,
teaching for 15.
including Western CPE, where you saw my Bitcoin course. So that's kind of how we cross paths.
Yes, exactly. So, tell us a little bit then about the course that you did do for Western CPA. What did it entail and what was the feedback from it?
Well, I've been teaching for Western CPE for a couple years now, and they approached me. They wanted someone to put together a course on Bitcoin. I've been following Bitcoin from the sidelines for several years just because I found it fascinating. And Western CPE didn't have anybody else that wanted to take it on. And so I was like, well, I'll do that. And so I did a lot of research, and it was a fun course to put together. Bitcoin is such a complex topic to try to humanize. And so for my analogy for Bitcoin mining, what I actually related it to was Abbott and Costello, their bit of who's on first, because that's basically what the mining process is. All these computers all looking at these transactions and finally agreeing, okay, at this moment in time, who holds what amount of Bitcoin? Somebody, once they all agree, then the process starts all over again. And so it was fun trying to take this really geeky, nerdy topic and humanize it. And so we also rounded up some interviews and put the course together. Western CPE was a bit ahead of the curve on putting that together, and so their attendance hasn't really drawn the way they wanted to. We did have a lot of people attend a December webinar, and I don't know if that's either a sign of more interest in Bitcoin or just people just scraping in hours at the last minute. But Bitcoin's kind of been up and down, and I see it right now. It's kind of in a holding pattern. I think that holding pattern might be related to the Silk Road trials going on right now with
Mm.
Ross Ulbricht trying to determine was he really running this illegal drug front online and using Bitcoin to finance it or not. And so everything seems to be kind of quiet on the Bitcoin front right now.
Sure, yeah. So I want to take it back to you mentioned that the course went live December 2014, I believe.
No, April. It was April.
April.
Well, actually, we filmed it in April. I think they released it in June last year.
Okay,
So
and then
yeah, that's yeah,
okay, gotcha. And then you started seeing some traction towards the end of last year from
right,
possibly accountants that just need to get their CP credits
right,
in. As
right.
far, can we talk a little bit maybe about the reluctance of the accounting profession to learn more about this area? What's your take on that? Is there a reluctance?
I don't think there's a reluctance. I think folks will learn it when they need to. My observation is it's real hard to spend Bitcoin. I've found one restaurant in the Atlanta area that supposedly took Bitcoin, and so I rounded up one of my CPA friends who was an interview for the Bitcoin class, and we went and had lunch at this Chinese restaurant, and thinking we'd pay it with Bitcoin. At the end, I just got a big blank stare. So fortunately, I took cash, but I wasn't even able to pay. I haven't been able to complete a transaction using Bitcoin. And so that's part of the reluctance is it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. Why should accountants learn about it until anybody's using it? But nobody's using it because there's nowhere to use it. So the Bitcoin is kind of stuck in this cyberspace area. There's some early adopters. There's folks that are getting paid. They're getting their salary in Bitcoin, but that's very few and far between. And it's still in a holding pattern. I think it will get there eventually, but it's not there yet.
Sure, definitely. I think there is a time, or this is a time when people are starting to learn more about it, and obviously waiting for locations like brick and mortar stores to accept it that will help um, push this trend along even faster.
Right.
But as far as, say, a company like Overstock or some people
Uh
that
huh.
make a lot of purchases online, there are plenty of purchases now. I think Overstock had $20 million worth of sales in Bitcoin.
Right. Something like that. And Dell's taking Bitcoin now. Microsoft is taking Bitcoin for some things. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're slowly seeing some of the big players online accept Bitcoin, but it's still kind of a niche thing. I mean, Overstock clearly they've found their niche. The people are spending money like crazy with Bitcoin there. The other challenge with Bitcoin is the volatility of it. I mean, a few months ago, I bought two Bitcoin at when I spent $700. Now today, like this moment, I think it's like worth $438 or something. So, it just so yeah, it's $438. So I kind of don't want to spend my Bitcoin. So I kind of want to get back whole again before I spend it. So there's that element too. People that are holding it, if it goes down and you've lost money, then you kind of want to wait it out like a stock and wait for it to come back up. So that's probably also keeping people from spending money unless they were early adopters and had just earned money. Because the other thing with Bitcoin is you can't early on, you personally could set up your computer and mine Bitcoin, but it's gotten so complex and requires so much electricity and so much infrastructure that the average person can't mine Bitcoin anymore. So they can't earn it. They have to get it through some other fashion, like changing U.S. currency or changing hard currency for Bitcoin, which that's a leap for a lot of people. Early on when you could set up your computer and mine Bitcoin and get kind of free money, even if it was felt like play money, it was still something to do. Now you've got to have access to a data center to uh, even have a chance at mining Bitcoin and earning any money.
Absolutely. And I want to take it back to you mentioned, hey, the volatility in Bitcoin is something
Mm.
that may scare some people and you may have to claim a loss on it. Although for some, claiming a loss might actually be a good strategy for them. So for accountants that want to learn more about the tax implications of Bitcoin and how to best advise their clients on whether they should hold it or convert it so that they can put it on their tax filing form. Where's the best place that accountants can learn more about this information?
The best resource I've found is a guy named Tyson Cross. And if you Google him, he is the Bitcoin tax attorney, and he's the guy out there. He is the leading edge on tax treatment of Bitcoin. And so he's made his practice advising people on Bitcoin. The IRS has treated it kind of funky. They've treated it like a capital item, and so that's the problem with Bitcoin. That's one of the things I showed in my class. Is like if you have three $20 bills in your pocket, you just spend a $20 bill. You don't have to report back to the IRS if, okay, I used this serial number of this $20 bill to pay for this item and the value of it went down or whatever. And so for Bitcoin, if you spend Bitcoin, you've then got to report to the IRS your gain or loss on that specific Bitcoin. And that's another impediment for people using it for day-to-day transactions, because who wants to figure out a capital gain because you went to Subway and bought a sandwich?
Sure, or with change
or a
tip,
loss, or
or a
whatever.
loss. And we're both on Twitter, and change tip has now made it possible for you to, instead of favoriting a
Mhm.
tweet, you can send a tip via
Okay, right.
with
Yeah,
digital currency. And you're right, it is difficult to track those. There's so many pieces: the cost basis, gain or loss, and how do you actually file that? Thankfully, we have
right.
Libra software to do
Exactly.
that for you. We did not plan that plug, but that is why
Right.
we do
Yeah.
exist. So that's awesome. So for let's see. So as digital currency is becoming more prevalent, though, you mentioned Tyson Cross as a possible resource for information. Are there other locations where accountants can learn more? Is Western CP doing more courses for accountants that want to delve into this topic a little bit more?
No, I think they realized they were too early on with the Bitcoin, and they're going to run the Bitcoin course. They schedule it periodically, so you can attend it. The Sleater Group, their blog, has recently had a series on Bitcoin, so that's a resource. The best resource I found for a while was Forbes magazine. Forbes was having lots of good information about Bitcoin. Two writers in particular are not at Forbes anymore. One is Kashmir Hill, and she, for at least 2 years in a row, lived for a week at a time on Bitcoin, paid her rent, bought her groceries, did everything on Bitcoin. And so you can, if you Google that, if you go to Forbes, the articles are still there. And if you just search Bitcoin, you'll find a whole list of articles. And so it was always fun to see her adventures trying to live on Bitcoin. She lives in Silicon Valley or near San Francisco, so a lot easier for her to do it. I would just be on the street in Atlanta trying to live on Bitcoin. And then Andy Greenberg he used to write for Forbes, now he writes for Wired magazine, and he's really been following the Silk Road trial and writing a lot about that. So, and he at one point interviewed, we don't know yet if Ross Ulbricht was the Dread Pirate Roberts who was the mastermind behind Silk Road. That's what the trial is, but at one point he interviewed the person who claimed to be Dread Pirate Roberts, and so that was an interesting read. And so Forbes, I would start out there. Andy's writing for Wired magazine now, but I'm not seeing. I read widely, and I'm not seeing a lot of coverage of Bitcoin right now. It's kind of a quiet period, probably partly because of the litigation, partly because it's crashed again, and so I think nobody's really interested in doing much with it. But our society changes so quick; you never know. It can just something can shift and suddenly Bitcoin will light up. At one point, for a point in time, one Bitcoin was worth more than an ounce of gold. It was very brief. It was only for a day, but then it crashed again. But you just never know when it can change.
Sure, absolutely. And those resources on Forbes, that's great to know, as well as I believe Kelly Phillips Erb did an article recently.
Sometimes, right? Yes, she sometimes writes about Bitcoin. She's the tax girl
The text.
for Bitcoin.
Yes.
And so, one thing I wish I'd had Bitcoin a few years ago, I wrote an article that was published in Pakistan. It was for the Pakistan Institute of Chartered Accountants, and they wanted to pay me for it, but I would have to send them my bank account information. And there was no way I'm going to send my bank account to Pakistan. I'm sorry. So I just didn't get paid for that. But it would have been nice if Bitcoin had more traction. And then that's an ideal case where you're trying to send money internationally. I looked into sending a wire transfer, and the wire transfer would have consumed most of what I would have earned. And so it was just
Mm.
easier just to not get paid for it and just have the bragging rights of I've been published in Pakistan. But as we have more global commerce, I mean, that's the one thing Bitcoin can do is just cross over all these international lines and currencies and just make it so that money just changes hands. But we're, again, not quite there yet.
Sure, it will take time, but I love that you are talking about the future possibilities and the direction that this technology, digital currency, whether it's Bitcoin or another digital currency form, is allowing us. Things like being able to get paid easily if you're working with a company that's on the other side of the world. Can you tell us
Right.
a little bit about this? Is the fun part. Tell us a little bit about what you think the future is for digital currency and what you think will help push this movement along.
The biggest thing that's come out recently is Apple Pay, where you get to pay with your phone. And Apple Pay is getting a slow start, but there's also a competing standard called currency. So the word current and then with capital C on the end. And between those two, you're going to be able to pay with your phone. And in my view, once we are paying with our phone and we're not getting our wallet out, we're not getting our credit card out, and you're used to paying with your phone, then it's a tiny leap to start using Bitcoin because then you're just changing apps. Right now, it's a huge milestone. You know, I go to the restaurant trying to pay for lunch and I can't because even though they supposedly take Bitcoin, they just stared at me blankly. And so this whole where we're doing more stuff with our phone and because for a lot of folks, you know, going from their wallet to their phone is not a huge deal because they're using their credit card on their phone. But again, once we get conditioned, we remove the physical credit card out of the picture. We're just carrying around our phone. We're able to conduct transactions. From there, it's just you're just tapping a different icon. You pull up your Bitcoin app and you pay. And so ultimately, I think Apple Pay is going to be good for Bitcoin because it gets right now paying with Bitcoin feels like a moonshot. You know, it just feels impossible. And so when we get that impossibility out of the way and says, "Oh, I'm just paying with my phone," and so this just becomes yet another way I can pay.
Absolutely. I love that. It is a whole mindset shift just to be able to wrap your head around this possibility of not having to carry your wallet or have a million credit cards to make a
Right.
payment. Well, thank you so much for your time today, David. This has been absolutely fabulous and hopefully a good resource as well for those that are interested in learning more about digital currency. Where can accountants or financial professionals find out more about your work and how to connect with you?
My website is accountingadvisors.com, and or if you just Google me, David Ringstrom, I'm very easy to find. I show up lots of places, but yeah, if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to weigh in with my opinion. So
Awesome, great. And you're also on Twitter as
I
well?
am on Twitter,
Okay,
and my Twitter handle is excelwriter.com. So I write about Excel spreadsheets, and so excelwriter.com. You can track me down on Twitter there.
fabulous. A man of many talents. Thank you so much for your time and thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week.